Hey guys, and welcome to my wrap up for all of the books that I read in the month of April. I was trying to read 30 books. I didn't quite make the goal that I had set for myself, but that's okay. I made it to 25 books, so I'm so glad with how many I read. That's like way more than I normally would read during the month. I did have a lot of help with audiobooks and reading short books, but I'm really just wanting to get a lot of these books off my shelves that I've been sitting here forever. So I think I made some pretty good progress. If you've kept up with watching my Friday reads, you'll have heard about a lot of the books that I've read. Quickly run through the rest of the books that I read for the month. I'm not going to go in depth with them. I'm just going to tell you basically a one sentence summary, hopefully, and then whether I liked the book or not. I'm not even going to get into the star ratings or anything because, to be honest, lately I've just been kind of over star ratings. It's just really annoying because I feel like when I'm reading a book, I'm thinking the whole time, like, what star rating am I going to give this book? And it kind of takes away a bit from the reading experience, where I kind of just want to read a book and see, did I like it or did I not? Did I hate this book? Did I love it? And kind of, instead of trying to just assign a number to a book and making them all fit into these boxes, that can be kind of confusing. So I don't know. For now, I'm still reading books for sure on Goodreads, but I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to keep talking about star ratings in videos just because I'm getting a little bit over them. I got to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This one is a science fiction book. It's set in the future, and I watched the movie adaptation for this as well. My first Philip K. Dick book. I really enjoyed this book, and I will definitely be reading more books by him very soon. Then I finished up my reread of The Hunger Games. I read Catching Fire and Mockingjay in preparation for the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I believe it's coming out in just a couple weeks now, and I loved these. I gave Catching Fire 5 stars. I loved rereading it, and Mockingjay, I liked the book. I would say I would still give it 5 stars, but it's more of like a 4.5, 4.75, just because of some of the things at the end that I've just been like thinking about, and I don't know. I'm not even going to attempt to go into my thoughts on it in this video or else it'll be way too long. But I did enjoy rereading, and I definitely rewatched the movies for this too. So it was just really a fun experience reliving this is definitely one of my like top series of all time. Then we have What Mama Left Me by Renee Watson. This one is a hard-hitting young adult contemporary book. I loved this one way more than my expectations, and I would highly recommend. Then we have another young adult book. This one is Speak by Lori Halse Anderson. This one was all about a young girl in high school who is having to deal with her experience of coping with sexual abuse, and this is like another hard-hitting contemporary book that I really enjoyed. This one, even though the subject matter on this one is definitely harder hitting and harder to read. Then we have 2 graphic novels. They're bind-ups of the same series, and it's Aya Life in Yop City and Aya Love in Yop City. Each of these are following Aya, the main character, and she is living in, I believe it's like West Africa, in the Ivory Coast in the 70s. I really enjoyed the comic book style. Let me see. It was Love in Yop City is the one I hadn't talked about yet. So I really enjoyed this book. I liked the second one, bind up in the series. I feel like better than the first one just because we have all that character development and stuff already there, familiar with the characters and everything. I'm really sad that these are the only 2 bind ups. Like the series stops at the end of this, or at least the English one. I'm not sure if the original French is, but I think that one's done too. I really was sad at the end of the last one because I felt like it was definitely left off at a place where the story could keep going, and I wanted to know more about the characters and like what was going to happen and stuff, but unfortunately I think these are the only 2 that are available. Another graphic novel that I got to was Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I enjoyed this one, not as much as the novel it's adapted from, but I did really enjoy this one too. Then we have The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This one was just a random read, honestly, just because it came in part of a series of these Chiltern special editions of books, and it was really short, but I don't know if I would say I necessarily liked it, but it was interesting. Then we have Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed, a new release. I did enjoy this book. It's a contemporary book, definitely looking at differences between like class and definitely looking at relationships of people who of different races and of different privileges, and overall I really enjoyed this book. And we have How to Find Love in a Bookshop by Veronica Henry. This one is a contemporary rom-com type of book. I liked this one. Yeah, I don't know why I was taking me from memory to remember, but yeah, I really did like this one. I wish this one was a movie because I just feel like it would adapt really well to a movie. Then we have What We Lose by Zinzi Clemens. This one is a contemporary story. We're following a young woman as she's basically like kind of finding herself, and we're learning a bit about her history growing up. She's an African-American woman, and she's dealing with just like racism, sex, family, country. I really enjoyed this book. I definitely recommend. And we have Hotel on the Corner of Bittersweet by Jamie Ford, and I did enjoy this book as well. Okay, this is one of the ones I haven't actually talked in depth about yet, so I'll let you guys know. This one was really good. I ended up enjoying it. I remember I mentioned before in one of my Friday reads, I was like halfway into this book and I wasn't sure yet how I was going to feel about it, but I ended up enjoying it. The dual timelines were good. I listened to this one on audiobook, which I feel like is a good way to read it. We're following Henry Lee as he's growing up and his experience with being Chinese, and has a friend who is Japanese. It's set around the time of the internment camps in World War II, and so that is one storyline. And then we're following him like present day. His wife has just recently passed away, and we're following him dealing with not just the grief but also reflecting on things that happened in his past and his relationship with his son. I overall did really enjoy this one. Then we have Gun Love by Jennifer Clement. This book was really good as well. It was a kind of like, it's not exactly young adult, but it's not exactly adult, I would feel like, just because the age of the main character, she is a young adult age, but the topics and things it talks about are definitely not exactly young adults level. But it's very overall, I would describe it kind of like a hard-hitting contemporary literary fiction. And I enjoy this one. But it's really sad, and it definitely makes you think about a lot of things, because we're following a girl, her name's Pearl, and she's living with her mother, and they live out of her mom's car. Her mom's car doesn't even drive, it just stays in the same spot. And we're following her growing up, and only really though for a few years, so it's kind of slice of life almost, because we're not with our main character for a long time, but a lot of stuff does happen in this short amount of time. In the short book, a lot of stuff happens. I read Vacuum in the Dark by Jen Began. This one is literary fiction. I thought it was just alright. It didn't really blow me away. I listened to this one mostly on audiobook. I kind of expected a little bit more, but I just didn't really enjoy this book, which I was looking forward to, because the main character, she's around, like, she's the same age as me, and I don't often read books where a character is the exact same age as me, and just like seeing her story, it was just, I don't know, I just wasn't really into it. And we have The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald. This one, we're following a woman. She's a widow, and she moves into this town, and she wants to make a bookstore, but she ends up getting a lot of backlash from people in the community, which could kind of, for their various reasons, don't really care for the bookshop. And I watched the movie adaptation for this, is available right now on Hulu. I would say this is one of those rare occasions where I like the movie actually better than the book, and the things that I had issues with in the book were changed and fixed in the movie. So yeah, I would actually recommend the movie over the book, which is very, very rare to say. Then I read The Revisioners by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, and this one I enjoyed. We're following dual timelines of one in 1924. We're following Josephine, who is the owner of a farm. I believe she or her husband or someone earned it through sharecropping. And we're following 100 years later one of her descendants, Ava, who is a single mom, and she's moving in with her white grandmother to take care of her. But then both of them end up having relationships, the Ava with her grandmother, and Josephine with a white woman who she befriends, who ends up becoming part of the Ku Klux Klan. And each of them have this underlying dangerous thing with the relationship that goes on. I enjoyed this book, and I would definitely recommend. And we have The Good Girl by Mary Kubica. This one was just alright. I actually honestly didn't really care over this one that much. I wouldn't recommend it. I think I gave it like 2 stars. This one is a mystery book. This was her debut, I believe, and I just overall wasn't hugely impressed with it. But I ended up going on to read the other book I own by Mary Kubica, Pretty Baby, and I will say that this one kind of redeemed her a little bit more as an author for me. I only gave this one 2 stars, like I said, and this was her debut. This one I gave 3 stars, so this was her next book that she came out with, I believe, and I could see her progress in her writing and stuff. I liked this one better. It was 3 stars, so it was like good, but not great. I don't know if it's necessarily one that I would hugely recommend, but it kept me entertained for the whole book, and that's pretty much all I really ask for in a mystery, is to keep me entertained. I will feel like in the end, okay, so this is one of the ones I haven't really talked in depth about, and we're following a young woman. She sees this girl who looks like she's a teenager with a young baby at the train station, and she's a woman who is very charitable, and in her job she works to help I think it was like immigrants or something. She works at like a nonprofit, so she's very into trying to help other people. It's a psychological thriller. We're following 3 different perspectives. I will say both of these books kind of follow a similar plot line and how like they're kind of like the setup. So in this one we're following the main woman who her name is Heidi, and she sees the young woman who we find out her name is Willow, and we're following her perspective, and we're also following third perspective of Heidi's husband, who is not okay with everything that's going on. So this one, I can't really say too much, so I don't want to give it away in case this is something that you are interested in reading. If it is, I would say give it a chance still, but like I said, not my favorite thriller of all time, or psychological thriller, but it was interesting enough. Definitely I didn't like predict the ending, so that's one good thing. Then we have Salvation Station by Catherine Schleich. This one was another mystery thriller, and I did enjoy this one. It's kind of similar to Pretty Baby, where I enjoyed it. I think it was good, just not like the most well done thriller or mystery I've ever read. Now we're into a nonfiction, and I've finished Mindhunter by John Douglas and Mark Olshaker. I really enjoyed this book. I definitely liked learning about the all about like the cases and stuff that go on in this book. So it's all about like serial killers basically, and there's a show on Netflix that is loosely based off of the events in this book. Definitely I could see once I was reading it some of the differences. The first 100 or so pages is all about the author John Douglas and his life and leading up to him becoming a part of the FBI's crime unit. So I know some people weren't really the happiest about that, but I feel like even though it's not the most interesting, it's definitely essential to kind of understanding his background, to how he came up with all of these things to help catch and categorize serial killers. The most interesting part I would say is in like the latter half, where we're actually getting into all of the cases and stuff, and I just found it very interesting. Something I would definitely reread again in the future, because there were so many cases it talks about. I would like to even read like books and stuff on specific cases. Then I mostly listened to The Sun Does Shine, How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row by Anthony Ray Hinton, and I really enjoyed this book. It's all about how he spent, I think it was like nearly 30 years on death row for a crime that he didn't commit. And I really, hard-hitting book, but I would really recommend this one. Another nonfiction book that I read was Making Our Way Home, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream by Blair Imani, and this one has like some illustrated pictures and graphics to go along with this. I really enjoyed this book. I think this is a really well done nonfiction history book. It just lays everything out so well, and I feel like I will definitely reread this again in the future, and I just really loved this. This is like the perfect nonfiction book. And there's 2 other books that I'm going to mention that I read that I don't own physical copies of. And the first one is The Alchemist by Paul Coelho. That one was just okay. It's definitely a very, very well very read and popular book, and I just thought it was okay overall. And then I read Turtle Under Ice by Julia Del Rosario. So this one is a young adult book told in verse, but I listened to it and it was just okay. I read another book by her, I believe it's called 100 Words or Less, or 1,000 words, 500 words or less, and I wasn't really impressed with that one either. but the covers on these ones are just so beautiful. I was like, let me just give this author another chance. But this one, we're following a story told in verse, following two different sisters, and they're dealing with the grief of their mother and things they have going on in their life. My issue with it was I was listening to an audiobook and it was really hard to tell the difference between the two sisters. How I feel like they should have either had two different audiobook narrators, or the author, I don't even know if that would have helped, because I feel like the author, the way she wrote them, they didn't really each have a distinct enough writing voice and to differ. So I kept getting confused. I would forget who was talking, which one I was listening to, what was going on with each one. Luckily it was a very short audiobook, so I got through it very quickly, but overall I just didn't really care the most for it. So I'm glad that I didn't like waste money on buying it. I just checked this one out as an audiobook through my library. So those are all the books I got to in the month of April. It was quite a few. I hope you guys kind of liked this format for me wrapping it up. And like I said, if you wanted to hear more about each of the books that I didn't really go too in depth into, I'll try to remember to leave links down to my previous few Friday reads that mentioned the books that I've talked about. So that's it for this video. Hopefully we'll have a good reading month for the month of May, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!